Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to Data Platform Downunder. Once again, myself and Martin Casserell are hosting this month's session where we've got Mikey Bronowski talking to us about SQL Server and PowerShell walk into a bar. Before we hand over to Mikey for this month's session, we do have a little bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded and will be made available on the YouTube channel where you can come back and watch this at any point in time. Throughout the session, if you've got any questions, put them into the chat window, raise your hand to indicate that you've got a question so that you can come off mute and ask Mikey the questions just like you would in a in-person user group. For those of you who don't know, Past Data Community Summit 2021 starts next week. If you haven't already registered, you can still register. It is a 100% free event, okay? Mikey's presenting, I'm presenting, Martin's presenting. Our last month's presenter is also presenting. There's a huge number of sessions that you're able to watch from both Microsoft and community speakers like ourselves, where you can learn about everything new, but also what's coming about and what people are using the different data platform products for. So make sure you register, continue your learning. And with that, we'll hand over to Mikey for today's session.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share now. Yeah, can you see this?
Yes, we can see your slide deck.
Perfect. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. In England today. Right now it's 2:30 a.m. So apologies for any delays. I just woke up. And today I'm going to present the session about SQL Server and PowerShell walking into a bar, which translates to they work together very well. And few words about me. As I mentioned, I worked in the UK, in Southampton, southern UK. I have a wonderful wife, Magda, and 2.5 years old son, Arthur. And I'm Microsoft certified trainer, and recently I've been awarded the Microsoft Data Platform MVP. If you want to contact me, here are my details. It's mikeybronowski@gmail.com or the same handle on Twitter or LinkedIn or GitHub. And sometimes I blog as well at bronowski.it. The agenda for today is an overview of 4 PowerShell modules that can be used with SQL Server, or at least I use them with SQL Server at work. So the first, probably the main part of the presentations is DBA Tools to manage SQL Server from command prompt instead of Management Studio. Then I will mention quickly what the Pester is, the framework for testing PowerShell in PowerShell, because that's the base for DBHX, another baby of SQL Collaborative that's been created by Rob Sewell. It's used for SQL validation, SQL Server validation, and testing your environment. And the last but not least is the import Excel, which is not directly related to SQL Server, but can help you to manage Excel spreadsheets without Microsoft Excel installed on your computer. So let's kick off with DBA Tools. DBA Tools that's the module created originally by Chris and Lemaire to do some migrations, I think of SharePoint SQL instances. And they say about themselves that it's SQL Server Management Studio as command prompt. It's based on SMO, So it's you can access every object from SQL Server. The main website for the project is dbatools.io, and the repo is on the slide. The link it's part of the SQL Collaborative account group, where it has multiple maintainers and loads of contributors. And if you go to that repo and go to see other repos for this group, you can see DBHX, Data Saturdays as well, and some other stuff that are open, free to use, and people are happy to help whenever you have issues. DBA Tools consist of over 650 commands right now, and yeah, it's probably almost anything you can do within Management Studio you can do with DBA Tools, and sometimes it's even enhanced, so you can do tasks against multiple objects like SQL instances, databases, quicker than in Management Studio. And the few of the contributors, Chrissy Lemaire, Claudio Silva, Rob Sewell, and Jess Pomfret, they started writing a book, Learn DBA Tools in Month of Launches. So you can have a look. I think on their website they have dbatools.io/book. That's the address. It's a project in progress, so they release chapters as they write them. So I'm not sure if it's finished, but yeah, you can check it out, and it's very good. Oh, sorry. So I will show you the DBA Tools now. I hope the screen is okay, the size is okay, and I'm using my setup is a Docker containers. So I have three containers running currently. 2 older version of Microsoft SQL Server on Linux, and the latest, that's 2017, and that's 2019. So my setup might be a bit different from the on-premises, and some commands work a bit different, but they mostly work the same, just few differences, and I will show you them at least at some point. So to install the module, we can use the PowerShell gallery and command install module, or we can use the package management software like Chocolatey to install the tool as well. I have the local version of DBA Tools, so I'm loading that from my disk. So I'm not installing the module this way. And yeah, so it's there when you go the get module name DBA Tools. We can see the module is installed, and the main function probably for the DBA Tools is connect DBA instance, and that will connect to the instance, and if I save it to the variable, you can browse all the properties here. And I didn't mention that, but all the DBA Tools commands have the verb, the PowerShell verb, dash, and DBA prefix, and that's how you can tell that they are DBA Tools. So let me connect to one of my SQL instances, and then we can see the properties of that instance. It takes, well, I just connected and I'm just getting the details, so you can see it takes some time, and that's because there is loads of different information about the instance, and it's loaded now, and we can see all the version details. Well, where is it? Here. We can see what is the CU level, or yeah, what are the additions? We can even see the database roles and the logins. Everything we can see here. So you could basically browse this object and get the details from that object about your SQL instance. But that's well, it would be quite difficult to use this, and probably more difficult than Management Studio. So the DBA tools have a number of functions to help you out with your tasks. And for this, I'm going to define some names. I'm going to create the databases. So I'm just defining the name, and in PowerShell Splat for better presentation. Otherwise, it would be just a very long line. I'm going to create new databases on all 3 instances, and this databases will be the owner will be SA, and I'm going to set the recovery model to full just to show you that I can set anything I want, and also the file growth will be different, just custom. So I'm going to define this one, save it to the variable, and now I'm creating 2 databases per instance, so it's 6 databases in total, and it takes less than 7 seconds. So the databases are created, and if you define them, of course, they were very tiny databases, just default size, but it takes 7 seconds. You can try to create that in Microsoft Management Studio GUI and see how long it takes. To create a database, I use the command new DBA database, and to get details about the database, I'm just switching the verb to get instead of new. So let's see what we can, how the databases look like. And to skip the system databases, I just use the parameter exclude system. There are commands that have this kind of switch. That it's not always the same name. It might be exclude system user, exclude system object, or something like that. But when you go to the help, you can see the parameters. So let's see my databases. And we can see on all instances, the instances are, the name is a bit weird because that's my container ID. But yeah, I set them up as the local host, and there is a port, different port for each container. So this is how the databases look like from get the DBA database. And because I've set also the custom file growth, I can see the files by using get DBA DB file. So I can see that there is a right now I'm querying just one instance and one database. So I can see that max growth, next growth size event is 115, exactly the same value as I used here, and similar for the log file. So you can see the properties of your files as well. And yeah, you can see the max size for the log and other details. So it's very good. Very quickly you can get the details, information about your environment. For DBA tools, another, well, it's not prefix, or it's suffix to prefix. I don't know how to call it, midfix, and it's called DB. So we have DBA as for DBA Tools and DB for database. And there's a number of database functions just to manage the database objects or properties like file. And you can also create a table. This one is very tiny and simple table, but I can define the schema of the table. So in my case, it's just one column, the varchar type, and it's nullable. So I can define that table and using new DBA DB table, create that table in my database, and I'm passing the definition of this table to the parameter column map, and that will create a table in my database. And once I have the table, I can also copy data from existing table to my newly created table. There are different ways to copy. Probably the basic one would be just copy the database from one place to another, but we can also use a query to copy the table. So I don't have to copy the whole table. I can select one column or just filter out using where. And in this example, I'm using the sys databases view, and the destination will be the table I just created here, and it has only one column, so I'm selecting one column here as well. So let's copy just the database names. As you can see, you have details about how long it was running, how many rows, and at least some stats. You can see that how the operation is performing. And the other operation would be to copy the whole object, the whole, in this case, view. So you have to specify it's either view, I think it's view, or table. So in my case, this is a view, and I'm copying that to the table that doesn't exist. It will be called auto create because I need to use auto create table switch. If I don't use this switch, show this. I'm not using the auto create table switch. When I run this command without the switch and the table doesn't exist on the destination, I will get the warning that I need to use the switch. So switch. It will create a new table and copy the rows. And we can query both tables using the invoke DBA query command, which this is a very universal way to get around tasks where you don't have a dedicated DBA Tools function. And, you can do things with T-SQL. And that's how you can work around a few different things. So invoke DBA query. And I've just executed query against two tables. So one is the new table with one column, and you can see that's the table, really basic. And the other one is the copy of the sys databases view. And what else? DBA Tools also is it's still very alive and it's growing. And every month there are new functions, new commands coming to the module. And this was created this summer to manage synonyms, the database objects called Synonym. A synonym is kind of a alias for objects. Like for a table, you can create a synonym for a table and use that as a different, like another layer. So if your application is using the synonym and you change the table beneath that, you can keep the synonym and then just change the synonym definition. And so to create a synonym, we use the new DBA DB synonym because it's database object. And we define the SQL instance, which is very common. Well, I think every command has this parameter, database, where we provide the database name, synonym, and these are synonym specific parameters. Base database, which is the target or source database, source schema, and source table in this case. So I'm going to create a new synonym. With the get DBA DB synonym, you can see the properties of that synonym. And now I can query the synonym. So it selects start from synonym 01, the one I just created. So it should give me details and the information that are stored in master sys databases. And that's it. So that is just an example of new functions that are. It wasn't there last year. It's just from this year, and there are still new functions coming to the module. So it's very alive and active, and there are still contributors adding new things or improving existing things in DBA Tools, and you can see the queue of the issues. It's growing, but the maintainers, contributors are responding quickly. So yeah, if you ever have an issue that maybe something is not working with the module or it doesn't do the thing you want to do, you can raise the issue and it will be looked at. So it's very good. The community behind the DBA Tools is strong. With the DBA Tools, we can also do the security management, like creating logins, users, and getting details about the security objects. So the login is the server level object, so there is no DB here. So I can create new login, and I think, let me see if I have the password. Yeah, I have the passwords. If I don't provide a secure password here, I will need to provide or get prompt for the password. So to make it easier for demo, I'm providing the secure password within the command. And the fourth parameter is to make sure the login is created, even if it's already on the server. So it will recreate the login. If I run this without the force and the login is there, it won't create the login. So I'm going to create a login, just a custom login on 2 instances. And now I can get details about the logins with get DBA login. And I'm going to grab all the details, all the properties about this object. I'm also excluding system logins, which you will see it might be a bit not what you expect. So based on the properties of the logins, these are not system logins because I excluded them. Same for this one. But yeah, you can see the logins, and I've just created the logins on the instances here. And have loads of different details about the logins, and yeah, some weird names, paths, but that's part of the SMO. And that's the get DBA login. And we also have, for many functions, we have also the remove command, where it wasn't always the case, and the new remove commands were created for some objects recently as well. So probably at the beginning, the contributors were more focused to create new objects rather than remove them. But everyone is free to contribute. So if you feel like something is missing, you can do this with the DBA tools. And I can show you that I'm not using the force, and because the login exists on the server, I'm getting the warning, and it's not being created. So if I run this with the force parameter, it will recreate the login. It's very, very easy. And if I'm not happy with some logins, like the built-in administrators, I can remove them from my instance. And using the confirm with false value, it will it means I don't get the prompt. So like without the confirm, I get the prompt. Are you sure you want to kill login? No, I'm not sure. But if you run this with the confirm as false, it will just remove them. It won't ask, which is cool because you can use this and some automated solutions, and you don't get the prompt if you are sure what you're doing with your tasks. We can also create the users as another part of security management on SQL Server, and it will have the DB, the command will have the DB part here. So I'm going to create a new user on 2 instances on 1 database. That's the username for the login name, which is different than the username is different than the login name, but it can be. It's possible. By default, it's created the same, but we can have different user names and logins, which is not always ideal, because when you see the database and you go into users and you don't see the username that is the login, it might be confusing at first and might cause some issues as well. So for the next bit of demo, I'm going to create a few more logins and users. This way this time I'm going to use the same username and login. So it's just for the next bit. And now we can also create the database roles for let's say probably the most common custom database role is DB executor, which is not built-in database role, not fixed database role. And we can create the role. I called it custom role, and I'm granting the permission. So the role will be created with DBA DB role, and it's just plain simple role. And because there was no command to grant permissions in DBA Tools, but I know how to do this with the query, I'm going to invoke DBA query. And that's the perfect example of something you cannot do with the function, but you can do with the query. So you are not limited to just commands from DBA Tools. You can expand that activity with the T-SQL. Did I run? Yes, I run this. And we can also now, since I created the user and I created the role, I can add the user to the role using add DBA DB role member. And to do so, I can provide the roles, multiple roles, the user, and confirm false to not get the prompt. And there are 2 other commands that are really helpful when you want to report what permissions the user has. So let's say someone asks you, can you tell me what are my permissions, or what is this user permissions? But because we want to include that into the change management to deploy to different server, or we need to do some kind of migration or just documentation. So you can run the get DBA user permission, and it has multiple different weird things. So I'm excluding the system database. I'm not interested in the M databases or TempDB. And because this one doesn't have the parameter for the username, I'm using the where object command to filter on the member name. So I'm going to run this one, and I can see details of the custom user I just created. So it's the custom role I added it before, and the DB data reader. So these are the details of this user, and we can also export DBA user, which I've noticed there is no DB here, DB user, or maybe there is an alias. Interesting. But anyway, I'm going to export that to a variable. So the SQL instance, the database, the user, and the file path for my file, because it will be exported to the text file. It's generated file, and now I can use the invoke item, which is alias is II, to open the file, and we can see the things about the user. So we can create the role, the create user, alter roles, and grant the permissions, the details. So you don't have to run anymore the I think there was a way to get this with T-SQL. You had to run two store procs to decode the permissions. With DBA Tools now we can run one command and you get the file. Okay, so I'm going to create one more login to use that as the DBA Owner for my databases. And you can do this with the set DBA Owner, and the parameter for the owner will be target login. So I'm going to change the DBA Owner. Now get the database, similar to the beginning of the demo, but I'm just interested in three properties here: SQL instance name and the owner, and FT is format table, so it looks like a table, and I can see the owner is changed, and that's very helpful when you are doing the restores and you restore it as yourself, or there is a software where it restores as the service account, and you want to keep the owner aligned with the policy, and with that you can just change it with one line. So yeah, that's very good. Very good. I will come back to the logins and security management in a second, because there is a common activity to use that common task that I usually need to do with the logins and users. But before I go there, I mentioned about the community tasks, community tools. DBA Tools is a community tool created by community, and the community contributes there, but it also allows you to install tools that were created by community. There are a few tools that you can install and use within DBA Tools, like install DBA who is active by Ada Mechanic. You can install that store proc and then invoke the SP who is active from DBA Tools, from PowerShell. because my instances are idle and they don't have any sessions, I use the show system speeds. Without that, it would be just empty, so not that impressive. But this is the familiar view from spwho is active. You can also install the scripts by from First Responder Kit by Brett Ozer originally, but they are open now. And it will just install the scripts. You can tell which script do you want to install. So I just picked one because it's quicker. And it doesn't have the dedicated command like spwho is active. So you can run invoke DBA query and just execute this proc. And it will do the same thing, basically. So you could do the same with the spwho is active, just provided spwho is active here. But this command has all the parameters. So depends what you want to do. Glenberry created the diagnostic queries a long time ago, and they are part of DBA Tools as well. And you don't have to install them; they are there. And one nice parameter is the use selection helper, which allows you to kind of use a picker like option selector, and I can browse through all these queries that Glenn created. So I'm going to pick one of the commands and it will execute, and you can see the version of my containers, and you can see this is version 2019 and this is 2017. I have two other tools. This one, it's a long presentation. It's created by my colleague from Yorkshire. Well, he's originally from Poland, as I am. But it's a free and open source monitoring solution that you can use in your development environments. Marcin Gmiński is the author, and he presented the whole hour about the tool. So I'm not going to even try talk about any parts of this, but have a look. It's sqlwatch.io if you need to monitor your SQL, and it's for free. And the last I have on my list, but it's probably the holy grail of all DBAs, is maintenance solution by Ola Hallengren. And I'm going to install the solution and also create the jobs with this parameter here. And it's done, and you can see the jobs by using get DBA agent job. That's another class of the commands for the agent. So it will be all things related to agent, like jobs, steps, and operators. And you can see the commands from Ola. And because we can use piping in PowerShell and in DBA Tools, we can kick off the jobs that we just listed. So all the jobs, that will show me all the jobs on the SQL Server. So I can use the same and start DBA agent job. It will start all the jobs I just listed here. It will take some time to kick them off, but you can see there. The databases are tiny, so the backups will run quickly. It wasn't that long. And with the DBA agent job history, we can see how did they perform. And well, I don't see much here, but they succeeded. They completed, and we can also make sure they completed because they were running backups, and we can see that using the get DB the backup history. DBA DB backup history. It was just created just right now. I'm querying one instance, so we can see that I've run some full backups and log backups, and it's all there within PowerShell. And with that said, I'm going to do a tiny migration between containers. We can use the backup DB command, DBA database command to backup database. So I'm going to back up one of the databases. It was impressive. That was really fast, but it's just 4 megabytes. It's empty. It's an empty database. You can use the measure DBA backup throughput to see how your backups are performing. And I think it takes the info from MSDB. So the stats comes from the MSDB. You can see how your backups are doing, and the migration is between the Docker containers. So I have to copy the backup file between containers, and there is no way to copy those files directly from container to container. So I'm going to copy the backup file to a C drive, and then from the C drive to the other container. That's done. That's the quickest migration I ever did. And here I'm going to restore the database. So I'm going to restore the file. I just copied to other instance. And because I'm using the Docker containers on Linux containers, you can see that the paths are a bit weird because this is a Windows style and that would be Linux style. So some of the information from DBA Tools might have different look or confusing sometimes because of the Docker container, but mainly you probably use the DBA Tools for on-premises or maybe Azure. So it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, it's restored. So the one of the biggest issues after the restores are the orphaned users. Well, at least when I did this in the past, when we had to refresh production database to lower environments like test, we had orphaned users. So the orphan user is when the user comes with the database because it's database object to the different server, but the login on the other server doesn't have the same SID as the login on the source server. So the user doesn't know that the login that exists, even though it has the same name, that is actually the same login. So there is a way to fix it within the SQL Server. There's a store proc for fixing the orphaned users, but you can do this with DBA Tools as well. So here's the report to see the orphaned users. That means that this user and this user they don't know about the logins on the server. We can try to repair the orphaned users, and you can see no matching login. Okay, so one way is to create the login. I can try to create the login, and when I run it's still there, the report for the orphaned users. So I'm going to repair now, and I can see that this one has been repaired. The login for this user exists, but it has different name. It is custom login. So the other solution would be just to copy the login details. So I can copy the login from my source server to my destination server. And what it does, You can see I don't get the warning. I just get the note here. So it might be not that consistent between the commands, and because the login exists on the server, but the user doesn't know about it. So I'm going to copy the login with the force switch. It's there now. Let's see the report. No orphaned users. Perfect. But if I do the restore once again, it's the same file, and I run the report, I still have the app one. Well, but the custom user is gone, because what the copy DBA login does is it copies the login with the SID. If you don't want to have the same SID, you can use the parameter new SID, and it will just create a new SID. So that's one way to create logins, and it's useful when you have an AG cluster and you have, let's say, 4 nodes, and it's good to have the same SID for logins on each node. Yeah, so that's a good example. The other things you can do with DBA Tools, like the backups of the databases, but the SQL Server has their own config, and you can back up the config as well. We can see the config is running the DBA spconfigure command. It's in the view sys.configurations or the sproc spconfigure, and it's exactly the same. And you can export that configuration to the file. So I'm going to export DBA spconfigure, and then after all, I will open that file, and you can see it's not the table view like here, it's the actual command. So you can store it, and then if you want to restore it, you can run the file, or you can import the file here. If you have a file, you can import that. And since I'm running a bit slower, probably because of the time of the day or night, I'm going to skip this part to show you the other modules. But that's basically importing the configuration or changing the values here. Yeah. We can also do testing in DBA Tools. We can test the build. So I can see if my build is the latest. You can provide different parameters here. How many versions, how many CUs behind you want to have to be compliant. So you can see that one of the instances, although they are on CU 13, but they have different version. One is compliant and one is not. You can test the DBA Owner, and if you want to have this as DBA Owner, you provide the DBA Owner here, and you can see that this one here is true. It's owner match, but others they don't match. So you can see the results. And those tests, last time I checked, they didn't work on container. So DBA maxdop, what is the current instance level, what is the recommended one, you can change that, and I think it will fail because of the container. Yeah, it's already taking some time. So it was just failing because my setup is the container. So in on-premises, it works without problems. So it's the test maxdop, and you can also set maxdop, and same for memory. And I think this one will fail as well. So let's see the test first. Yeah, it's failing. So set will be the same, and it's because of the setup, and it's been recently changed. It worked and previous versions of DBA Tools, so something is different. But you can use this in on-premises. But with tests with that set, we can move to the next module. which is Pester. Pester is a testing framework created by Jakub Jareś, and the whole project website is on pester.dev. The Windows Server 2016 and Windows 10 comes with the pre-installed version, which is version 3. Currently, there is version 5, but DBHX that I'm going to talk about later, they support version 4. So 3, 4, 5. 5 is the latest, not supported by DBHX. And the main bit for Pester is the assertion, and it should command. So I'm going to show you what that means. It's just a quick test, Pester test. Installing Pester is as easy as DBA Tools with Gallery or Choco, the package management. So here's my test. Here's the describe blog. So what I'm testing, like the whole thing, and there are specific it blocks for the specific tests. And in my case, it's a function telling if this event today is virtual or physical. So I'm testing if this is virtual or physical. So that's how the test looks like. There are also blocks like before all and after all, after each, before each. So you can run different commands before each it block, or after all, if you want to clean them up, for instance. And the should assertion is here. So we can see that the objects I'm getting here, the details of it's the results of the function, should not be null or empty. The name should be this defined name here, and the addition should match. And there are different assertions as well in Pester. So the should operator, you can get the should operator details from here. And you can see there are a few that are useful. So there are ones for numeric values or for text or just for Boolean, be true, be false. Cool. So let's run my test. I have the file, exactly the same file, the same test. Let's invoke my test. When it's running, it will give you some metrics like how many tests passed, how many failed, and how long it took to run the whole test, the whole set. And for each test, you also have details how long it took for each test. So you can see that this event is virtual and this event is not in person. So that means I'm not in Australia right now, which is quite good. I think my wife would be happy in the morning. Wouldn't be happy in the morning if I was in Australia today. And yeah, that's basically one simple test. So DBHX that we are going to talk about now are the wrapper for Pester. And it was created by Rob Sewell, the DBA with a long beard. And it's dedicated to SQL Server. So Pester itself, you can run different tests on Windows or just for PowerShell, but DBHX are dedicated to SQL Server. And very similarly to DBA Tools, the website is dbhx.io, and they are part of SQL Collaborative as well. They don't have so many functions, just a handful, because DBHX focus mostly on the checks and configs. And right now there is over 130 checks and probably over 250 configs for each checks. And you can see the difference between DBA Tools commands and checks, that they have prefix DBC. That's the only difference. Well, that's one of the difference in DBHX. And like two previous modules, you can install both with PowerShell Gallery or Chocolatey. And we can see the commands, just a few commands in the module, mostly stuff like config and file. Yeah, just config again. So mostly the internal or commands to manage the checks itself. And we have almost 233 configs for the checks. So I'm going to show you how they look like. These are the checks. These are the configs. The checks have groups, can be for agent, for database, for instance, and for server. There are different groups. There are also different types of the checks, and that you run against instance because you want to check the agent, or you run against instance because you want to check the database or the instance, or you run against the computer because you want to check the server. Each check has the unique tag, so you can refer to the check by the unique tag, or there is another place where we have all tags. So you can see that OLAS checks for OLAS maintenance solution might have similar tag like maintenance solution, but they also have unique tags. And each check has a corresponding config where you can find when you can define the values of these configs, and it might be just a single config or multiple config positions. And the configs are like that. The name is here for each config, the unique name, and the default value. Well, that's the default, but you can change it. It doesn't store the default value here. So you can see that there are the message IDs you want to have in your environment, just 3 of them, or the names for OLAS jobs, but you can change them. If you use different naming convention, like you have a prefix for DBA or something, you can change them. So yeah, that's how you can configure the checks. You can view the checks by the tags. So if you see the high tag, it's a tag that multiple checks share this tag, but you can also use the specific unique tag for one check. Similar to for configs, you can either pick config by name or using the wildcard and get all the configs for this name. And the config can be also exported. By default, it goes to this location, but you can provide the location as well, so it will just run the, well, it didn't open the file. Interesting. It will that's new. I just wanted to open the file, but well, it didn't do anything. So it just export the config. And if you have, let's say I have 2 different patching weekends, and we patch different servers and we check different things. So I can have a config for this weekend and then for another weekend. And I can import that config as well. To change the config files, we use set dbconfig, and then, oh yeah, here's the import. And if you are done with your work, you can reset dbcc config, and it will just reset to the default values of the module. So to run the checks, you just do invoke dbc check, provide the tags of the checks and the server where you want to run this. I'm going to run this against one instance, and I can see that it's very similar output to Pester. I can see that some of them failed, some of them passed. I'm not going into the details because yeah, I said that my databases should have auto close on, so I'm not a good DBA. But you can also output in different ways. You can have the detailed view or just summary, like just to see if they passed or failed. So if you have someone who is not DBA and you want them to run the tests and call them, if you are DBA on call, for instance, just call them if they see any failed. So yeah, and there are different options to see just the fails or failed tests if you are not concerned about the past test. And since you have lots of tests, lots of environments, you don't want to have all this noise in your report or anywhere. And speaking of the reports, we can export the checks to the file, to the JSON file, like that. So I'm going to run the check, convert DBCC results, and it didn't work because where's my location? Okay. Oh, of course, because I used the wrong name. So we can see the results in the JSON format. Or we can export the things to the table. So I'm going to DBCC check export write DBC table to one of my instances, and then using DBA Tools, I'm queried that command, so I can save it to the table. And this one will take some time, so I'm not going to show you, but I will just mention that you can also export that to the dashboard, which comes with the module. It has a template Power BI file, and you can see the dashboard. And the other dashboard, so I see we are running out of time. So there is one more module I wanted to show you. It's import Excel for managing Excel, but I can quickly show you what it does with collaboration with DBHX as well. That's an example by Jess Pomfret, my colleague, former colleague since Friday. And we are running DBHX here, defining the conditional formatting with import Excel, and defining the worksheet, the spreadsheet. So the worksheet name, the table name, all this stuff. We even add the pivot table and select things, and then we use the export Excel command to create the Excel file with the module import Excel. And when it opens, we have the checks in the Excel spreadsheet, and we have a dashboard in Excel. And it's all done with DBHX and import Excel. And if we have 5 minutes, I can go through the import Excel, unless we are running out of time.
Yeah, you're okay, Mikey.
Okay. Yeah, so the import Excel module is created by Doug Fink from New York, and it's based on the EP Plus library. It was free library, Excel package library, Excel package Plus. It was free to use everywhere, but the new version it has a different license, but still the current import Excel uses the old license, so you can use it anywhere. The repo is on GitHub, so you can contribute. It's open as well. And the main functions are import Excel, export Excel, open Excel package, and close Excel package. And I will show you how it looks like. So installing the module we can do with PowerShell Gallery. There is no Chaka, I think. Let me clean up make sure there is no file for the examples. And the first Excel spreadsheet I'm going to create will have the commands from the module, and I'm going to export that to the Excel file using the export Excel command, and I will provide the path, and this one kills the Excel. So I have an Excel open here, and this will kill my instance of Excel. So let's do this, and my Excel is gone. And it will kill any spreadsheet that you have open. So if you are supposed to work on just one file, make sure the other files are saved. And I didn't show the file yet, so I'm going to add extra bits to the spreadsheet and then open the file. To open the existing file, you can use the open Excel package. So I just created the file here, and now I'm going to open that file, because the Excel file is a package. It's the XLSX is a zip file, so I can open that package, making sure I kill the Excel again, so I don't have this file open in Excel. And now I can add worksheet. So here I just exported some commands to a default worksheet, and now I'm adding the worksheet with a name and moving it to the end on my list of worksheets, and it's empty at this moment. So I want to fill it with some data, and I'm getting the processes on my laptop, and I will pass the processes to export Excel to the package, this time to the package. Before it was just file. You can see the path here, and here's the Excel package I just opened here, to the new worksheet, and I will format this as an Excel table with some extra bits like free stop row. And that's done. Process, yes. And to make it more shiny, I'm going to add a pivot table. So again, I will open the Excel package, add pivot table, and here's the definition of the pivot table. So pivot rows, pivot columns, data, and my source will be the process, the one I just created here. And I will activate that sheet, means when the workbook opens, it opens on this worksheet. So I open the package, I can add the pivot table, and now I'm closing the package. So export Excel does the same, it closes the Excel package. So I'm closing the Excel package, which is basically saving the package, and the switch show, which you can use for export Excel as well, will open the file, and this will open the Excel spreadsheet with the pivot table, because I wanted the pivot table to be highlighted. And we have the source for pivot table, which is Excel table, and it's Excel table. And we have a plain worksheet, the first one, with default name, which is sheet 1. Sheet, yeah, I never know how to pronounce that correctly. The other example is the conditional formatting. We can define the conditional formatting. So I'm getting the events from my laptop and just define some conditional formatting for a few columns. So it will be highlight the above average values, so highlight the duplicate values, I highlight the values that contain information, the text information. So that's defining the conditional formatting. Again, passing the data set to export Excel, to a worksheet name, table, where I'm going to save it. And here's the conditional formatting bit. And I'm also going to auto-size, activate, kill Excel, show, all this shiny stuff. Excel is here. It's open, so I'm going to kill it and reopen. And that's the conditional formatting. So it's highlighting the information. If I remove that, it's no longer highlighted. That's above that's the duplicate. So if I have a value like that, it's unique. And if I add one more, it's duplicate here. So it's highlighted. And this is above average. So if I provide a tiny number, it won't be highlighted. But if it's the positive one, it will be highlighted because it's above average, and it also changes the average. And data. Well, I forgot where is the conditional form. Oh, here is the conditional formatting. The conditional formatting rules are here. So they are very clean. You have just 3 entries as we've defined the 3 entries in PowerShell. So it's very cool. The other way to use the conditional formatting is to use icons. So we can use different command. Here's the new conditional text, and here's new conditional formatting icon set. And again, similar conditional formatting, just pass it to the export Excel. My data set is tiny, and we have the icon set, which can be anything, and it changes. So I added just a worksheet to my existing file, which is cool because I can add worksheets to existing files. And that's probably the last bit. And we can also create charts. So I'm going to create data. I don't have this data. I just created the data using math function. And I'm going to export that data to the Excel. So I created the worksheet math. And now I'm going to define the chart. It's a new Excel chart definition with the chart type, all these bits for chart. You need the location of the chart. Row 0, column 0 means it will be on the top left corner. And I'm going to export that to the worksheet math chart, the new worksheet with the Excel chart definition that is defined here, and activate and show. And that will open Excel again, and it has a shiny chart with the underlying data here. I just created. And the last example is to use the SQL. You can use this with the SQL. We've seen that with DBHX, but we can also query the results. We're using invoke DBA query with DBA Tools. And then we can export the results to the Excel. So it's here, backup set, table exported to the Excel. I have the Excel installed on my laptop, so you can see the files actually, but you don't have to install Excel on your computer to use import Excel module. And to sum up the presentation, sorry for overrunning, we've seen DBA Tools module, which is the community created module to manage SQL Server from command prompt, the DBHX to run tests against your environment, which is a wrapper for Pester, and import Excel, which is managing Excel without Microsoft Office installed on your computer. And that's all I had for today. And I don't have the last slide, so yeah, that's all. Thank you for having me today. And are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mikey, for giving up your time and waking up early to present to us on PowerShell, in particular with SQL Server. David says, nice work, Mikey. So during the session, there were a couple of questions, specifically around specific DBA tools commands. So in the chat window, I provided the link to, which you did have on your slide deck, the link to docs.dbatools.io, so that everybody here is able to go to that location. It's a fantastic location for you to learn about DBA tools. Everything that Mikey has covered off today is documented there, so you are able to use those commands in your environments.
Yeah, and it's very, very good. And whenever you find something that doesn't quite work, or you think it's missing details, information, you can raise that on GitHub, and they will fix it. Or you can fix it and raise the PR, so the maintainers will merge it. So yeah, it's very quick.
Dan, do you want to take yourself off of mute? So are you referring to the DBA Tools command specifically, working not on a SQL Server database? Or do you want to elaborate for us?
Yeah, not so much just the DBA Tools, because I believe that's SQL Server only, but some of the other, like that Excel tool, that seem to be a bit independent of SQL Server, so I can run on Windows events and stuff like that. So yeah, what am I trying to ask? I guess there was mentioned that that Pester framework was a testing framework, but I think again that's only on SQL Server.
So the DBHX and DBA Tools are for SQL Server only. Might be used in Azure, some of them, but Pester, you can use Pester for your Windows without attaching SQL at all. We use Pester test for Oracle bits, but mostly on the system, Windows system level. So you don't have to work with SQL and Pester. And import Excel is mostly for Excel. So if you get the data from Windows or another place, you can work with that. So you don't have to use SQL. If you have any other database and you are able to produce data as a CSV, then you can use import Excel.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Is there any other questions while we're waiting? Mikey, you may have seen Mike has put a comment in about really appreciating the session and learning about DBHX. And while you were taking us through this session, he has installed the DBHX module and will start to play with those. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's that's a great module, and it requires some time to spend to learn more, but it pays off. We have, for our maintenance patchings, we have a set of DBHX, and you just run one file or one command, and you see immediately if your AGs are healthy or clusters are healthy, and you can connect to databases. You don't have to manually check each server, which is perfect.
Okay, so it looks like Dan's typing another question. No, thanks, Mikey. Great session. As I said, if you are wanting to ask questions, take yourself off of mute, put your hand up, and we can have those questions asked instead of typing them in the chat window. Try and make this as informal as possible. But with that, if nobody else has any other questions, I am conscious of Mikey's time, given it's, what are we coming up to? Close to 4, 10 to 4?
Yeah, so I still have 3 hours
10 to 4 in the morning. We'll let Mikey go and get some sleep before having to get back up and go and do his day job. So I'd like to thank Mikey for his time. I'd like to thank everybody for being part of this session and the fantastic questions that you have been putting in the chat window.
Thank you for having me. That was a pleasure.
As mentioned at the start, Past Data Community Summit is on next week. If you haven't registered, make sure that you go and register. There'll be some fantastic content from international speakers covering all aspects of the data platform environment. We have scheduled.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add that my session on PASS is also about the DBA tools, and it's the same topic, but I just included a few bits more for PASS. So it will be on demand. So it's not a live session. You can watch them probably when they release, if you're interested on reviewing the session.
Thank you, Mikey. You may have all received a notification. We have scheduled our session for next month, which is on clustered column store indexes. So I look forward to seeing you all in a month's time. Everybody stay safe, enjoy your learning, and maybe we'll even chat at Past Summit.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon, because I guess it's 2 o'clock or something.
Yes, just coming up 2 p.m.
Yeah. So enjoy your afternoon. And thank you for having me again.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.